50 years ago, the world watched in awe as the Apollo 11 crew lifted off from Earth, embarking on a journey that would forever change the course of human history. A few days later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to set foot on the moon, their names etched into the annals of history. But there was a third astronaut, often overlooked, who played a crucial role in this historic mission: Michael Collins. While Armstrong and Aldrin walked on the lunar surface, Collins remained in orbit, alone in the command module, circling the desolate moon. For decades, Collins carried the weight of a secret, one of the most incredible and terrifying discoveries in human history. Before his passing in 2021, he finally revealed the truth about what the Apollo 11 crew encountered on the moon, a revelation that NASA had kept hidden for over half a century. What did they find? Why was Collins sworn to secrecy? And why has this revelation changed everything we thought we knew about space exploration? It's time to uncover the truth. Michael Collins was no ordinary astronaut. A decorated test pilot and aerospace engineer, he was handpicked to fly the Apollo 11 command module, Columbia. Unlike Armstrong and Aldrin, Collins never set foot on the moon. Instead, he remained in lunar orbit, responsible for keeping the command module operational and ensuring the safe return of his crewmates. But what many don't realize is that while orbiting the moon, Collins experienced something far more unsettling than the loneliness of space. During his 48-minute lapse around the dark side of the moon, completely cut off from Earth's radio signals, he saw and heard things that defied explanation. In his final years, Collins admitted that what they discovered on the moon was far beyond what humanity was prepared to handle. Strange transmissions from the dark side. The Apollo 11 mission was a triumph for humanity, but behind the scenes, it was filled with anomalies that have puzzled experts for decades. During the mission, radio operators back on Earth picked up a series of strange transmissions from Collins as he orbited the far side of the moon. Since all direct communication was lost during this phase, what Collins recorded in his personal logs remains one of the most mysterious aspects of Apollo 11. Several leaked NASA transcripts suggest that Collins repeatedly referred to a presence outside the command module. At first, Mission Control dismissed these as misinterpretations or communication errors. But Collins insisted that he was not alone up there. What exactly did he see? And why did NASA go to great lengths to keep it quiet? The unexplained lunar object Collins wasn't the only one to report something unusual. Armstrong and Aldrin also described strange sightings on the lunar surface. Shortly after landing, a secret communication channel between Apollo 11 and Mission Control was allegedly used by Armstrong to report something incredible. According to a former NASA employee, Armstrong described other spacecraft watching them from the crater's edge. These claims were backed by recordings that leaked years later, in which Armstrong can be heard saying, "They're here. They're watching us." Buzz Aldrin, in later interviews, hinted at the presence of unidentified objects near the lunar module. But it was Collins who had the most prolonged exposure to these strange occurrences. From his vantage point in orbit, he observed bizarre luminous objects moving in ways that defied all known physics. At times, they appeared to be monitoring the Apollo 11 crew, following them as they maneuvered around the moon. Was Apollo 11 being watched? Who or what was watching them? If the Apollo 11 astronauts really did see something, the question becomes, who or what was watching them? Many researchers believe that these encounters provide evidence of an extraterrestrial presence on the moon. Some even suggest that NASA knew about these entities before the mission, and that the true purpose of Apollo 11 was not just to land on the moon, but to make contact. Supporting this theory is the strange behavior of NASA in the years following Apollo 11. Despite successfully landing on the moon, subsequent lunar missions were abruptly canceled. The Apollo program, which had plans for multiple future landings, was suddenly cut short after Apollo 17. Could it be that NASA had been warned not to return? Michael Collins' deathbed confession. For decades, Collins remained tight-lipped about what really happened on that mission. But in his final years, as he reflected on his extraordinary life, he finally admitted that Apollo 11's discovery was too shocking for the world to handle. In a series of private conversations, which have since been leaked by individuals close to him, Collins allegedly revealed that NASA's public version of events was a carefully crafted deception. According to these reports, the Apollo 11 crew witnessed structures on the moon, artificial in nature. They saw what appeared to be ruins, possibly remnants of an ancient civilization. These ruins, Collins claimed, were located near the landing site in the Sea of Tranquility. He suggested that the lunar surface held evidence of intelligent life that had once inhabited or visited the moon. Even more astonishingly, Collins hinted that some of the strange objects they encountered weren't just watching them, they seemed to be reacting to their presence, almost as if they were expecting them. The censored lunar photos. NASA has released thousands of images from the Apollo missions, but many have been heavily altered or classified for decades. Researchers analyzing these images have found strange anomalies, structures that resemble domes, towers, and even what some believe to be machinery. In one of Collins' final statements, he implied that certain Apollo 11 photos had been intentionally edited before being shown to the public. Shadows were darkened, objects were blurred, and some images were outright removed from public archives. Could NASA have been covering up the greatest discovery in human history? Why the secrecy? If the Apollo 11 crew did uncover evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, why would NASA and the U.S. government keep it secret? One possibility is that they feared the societal impact. The revelation that humanity was not alone in the universe could have caused mass panic, disrupted religious and philosophical beliefs, and altered the global power structure. Another theory suggests that the U.S. government wanted to study the discovery in secret, perhaps to gain technological advantages. If these structures or objects contained advanced knowledge, revealing them to the world would mean losing control of potentially game-changing technology. Some insiders claim that the true reason NASA stopped sending humans to the moon was because we were warned not to return. The Apollo astronauts may have been given an unspoken message. Earth is being watched, and we are not welcome beyond our own planet. Echoes of other astronauts. Michael Collins wasn't the only astronaut to suggest something extraordinary about the moon. Other Apollo astronauts, including Edgar Mitchell and Gordon Cooper, have spoken publicly about their belief in extraterrestrial intelligence. Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, openly stated that high-ranking officials within NASA and the military were aware of extraterrestrial presence, but deliberately concealed it from the public. He claimed that government agencies had retrieved evidence from crash sites, including Roswell, and had engaged in back-channel communications with non-human intelligences. Gordon Cooper, an astronaut from the Mercury and Gemini programs, went even further. He claimed to have personally witnessed a UFO land at a military base and was ordered to remain silent about it. The future of lunar exploration. With modern space agencies and private companies planning a return to the moon, the truth may soon come to light. NASA's Artemis program aims to establish a permanent presence on the lunar surface. China, Russia, and even private entities like SpaceX are racing to explore the moon's hidden regions, including the South Pole, a location rumored to hold even more lunar mysteries. If Collins' confession is true, and Apollo 11 did uncover evidence of something extraordinary, then future missions could be the key to revealing humanity's greatest secret. The mission that changed everything. Michael Collins spent his entire life carrying a secret that would change everything we thought we knew about the moon. Unlike Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, Collins never walked on the lunar surface. But what he saw and experienced while orbiting the moon was something far more unsettling. And before his passing, he finally admitted the truth. What did Apollo 11 really find on the moon? Why did NASA bury the evidence? And most importantly, why haven't we been back in over 50 years? The time has come to uncover the hidden history of Apollo 11's terrifying discovery, the mission that changed everything. The secret space race. When Apollo 11 launched on July 16, 1969, the world watched in awe. Humanity was about to take its first steps on another world. But what the public didn't know was that behind the scenes, NASA had concerns they could never share with the general population. The moon had always been an object of mystery. Even before the Apollo mission, strange anomalies had been observed on its surface. Astronomers had recorded bizarre lights, unusual geometric structures, and inexplicable shadows moving across the lunar terrain. And NASA knew something else, a secret that had been kept since the early days of space exploration. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union were desperate to prove their superiority in space. But was the moon landing really about beating the Russians? Or was there another goal? Declassified Soviet documents reveal that the USSR had been just as interested in the moon's mysterious anomalies as the Americans. In fact, Soviet lunar probes had reported unexplained radio signals coming from the moon's far side as early as 1959. NASA had similar experiences. In 1966, the Surveyor 3 probe captured images of what appeared to be unnatural formations in one of the moon's craters. Some of these formations looked eerily similar to structures, towers, domes, and even what some scientists described as machine-like debris. This information never made it to the public. And by the time Apollo 11 was ready to launch, NASA had one mission in mind beyond just planting a flag: to investigate what was really on the moon. The encounter on the lunar surface. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin finally set foot on the moon, their public communication was filled with excitement and historical significance. But behind the scenes, a different conversation was taking place. NASA had set up a secret radio frequency that was meant for highly classified transmissions. This was separate from the public feed being broadcast to the world. According to leaked transcripts, Armstrong sent a chilling message: "They're here. They're watching us." Buzz Aldrin also reported seeing unidentified objects near their landing site. These objects were silent, hovering, and seemed to be observing their every move. Then something even stranger happened. As Armstrong and Aldrin explored the area around the landing site, they came across something impossible, something that shouldn't exist on the moon. According to whistleblowers who later worked with NASA, the astronauts allegedly discovered structures, not natural rock formations, but artificial geometric structures. Some appeared damaged, as if they had been abandoned for thousands, perhaps millions of years. One structure in particular stood out: a massive, partially buried metallic object. Its design was unlike anything ever seen before. Some researchers believe it resembled a crashed spacecraft. And then suddenly, the transmissions from Apollo 11 cut off. For several minutes, NASA lost direct contact with Armstrong and Aldrin. What happened during those lost moments remains one of the greatest mysteries of the entire mission. Michael Collins, the silent witness. While Armstrong and Aldrin were making their discovery, Michael Collins was alone in the command module, orbiting the moon. But he too saw something he was never allowed to discuss. Collins reported strange moving lights following his module as he circled the moon. At first, he thought it might be reflections or debris from the lunar surface, but then the objects changed direction, something no space debris could do. And then came the strangest moment of all. During one of his orbits around the moon's far side, completely cut off from Earth's communication, Collins saw what he later described as a massive, unknown structure buried in shadow. He couldn't take photos. He couldn't tell anyone. But he knew, at that moment, that the moon was not as lifeless as NASA had claimed. And for the rest of his life, Collins carried that secret with him. The NASA cover-up begins. When Apollo 11 returned to Earth, the astronauts were immediately placed in quarantine. Officially, NASA claimed it was to prevent contamination from lunar bacteria. But some believed the real reason was to debrief the astronauts and ensure they wouldn't reveal what they had really seen. In the following months, strange things began happening within NASA. Several Apollo 11 photos mysteriously disappeared. Raw footage from the moon landing was erased. Mission control audio logs were edited and classified. And most tellingly, the astronauts' public statements seemed oddly rehearsed. When asked if they saw anything unusual, they gave short, vague answers. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins seemed nervous, as if they were hiding something. The abrupt end of the Apollo program. At the time of Apollo 11, NASA had ambitious plans. The Apollo program was supposed to continue well into the 1970s, with future missions exploring deeper into the moon. But suddenly, everything changed. Apollo 17 became the last manned mission to the moon. NASA abandoned its plans for a lunar base. Missions beyond low Earth orbit were quietly shut down. It was as if something had warned us not to return. Collins' final revelation. For decades, Michael Collins remained silent. Unlike Aldrin, who occasionally hinted at the truth, and Armstrong, who became reclusive, Collins avoided discussing Apollo 11's strangest moments. But in his final years, he finally spoke out. According to leaked sources, Collins admitted that what they found on the moon was too shocking for the world to handle. He suggested that the lunar structures were not natural, that the Apollo 11 crew was being watched, and that NASA's true mission had always been to investigate these anomalies. But most chilling of all, Collins allegedly revealed that humanity was not alone. He suggested that the moon was once inhabited, or perhaps still is, by an intelligence far beyond our understanding, and that intelligence does not want us there. What comes next? Now, more than 50 years later, the world is finally returning to the moon. NASA's Artemis program aims to establish a permanent presence on the lunar surface. China and Russia are planning their own moon bases. Private companies like SpaceX are preparing for human colonization of deep space. But the big question remains: will we finally uncover the truth? If Michael Collins was right, then future missions may reveal what NASA has kept hidden for decades. And if we're not alone, what happens when we set foot on the moon once again? The Apollo 11 mission was a triumph of human ingenuity and courage. But it was also something else, a journey into the unknown that revealed secrets we are only now beginning to understand. Michael Collins, the forgotten astronaut, carried the weight of those secrets for over half a century. And before his passing, he finally shared the truth. The moon is not what we thought it was, and neither are we.